From cardiac sonographer in Hawaii to a health coach serving high achieving women in Florida, but she serves people from anywhere at any time on her own terms and has created an incredible thriving career from herself that stemmed from her personal painful journey, her dark night of the soul, to help others navigate similar situations with much greater ease. So welcome, Melissa Patterson.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shaunna, for having me here. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
I am really excited to chat with you too. And your transformation and your journey is really a testament on so many levels. And I also so I was a radiologist and you were an ultrasound tech. And so I know that we know that sonographer, sonologist world really well.
Mhm.
Take us back and tell us, what were you doing before you became a health coach? Like, have you always been interested in health? Tell us what led you to even become a sonographer.
Yeah, I think we all have this feel when we're younger and we think about like what I want to do as we get older. And I just knew I wanted to serve others. I could see the pain that people were going through and I wanted to help them some way or another. And as I got older, you know, being a Filipina, my mom, they always want to push you to be a doctor or a nurse. So I still wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. And one day I was, at a gynecologist's office and I saw a little pamphlet or whatever about OBGYN sonography. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And that really piqued my interest because I really love children. I was like, why not? Babies. I'm going to be
Yeah.
with babies all the time. And so that really got me to really go back into or go to school to learn more about sonography.
Awesome. Okay, so how did you go from being interested in obs ultrasound, obstetric ultrasound, to becoming a cardiac sonographer? And then we'll do the leap from how did you go from sonographer to health coach. So bring us along. So you're investigating this as a way to help people. It's real, it's legit. You're in the medical field. It feels really fun. It exercises your brain. So tell us, what had you shift over, and tell us a little bit more about that story.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who goes into the field, because we have that love of learning. And thankfully, when I went to school, I actually had the opportunity to learn all of the modalities for
Right.
sonography. So I had a choice, and I chose to go to obstetric. And again, my mind was saying, this is going to be beautiful. This is going to be fun. It's going to be a great, career. It's going to be all fun stuff. And when I actually went to the field and worked there, it was harder than I thought because it wasn't all fun and games. It was more people are coming to you because there is an issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's some sort of problem or some sort of condition that they're experiencing. And I think what really got me one time was, this lady that I had been working with all her pregnancy. And at 38 weeks, she came to me and she couldn't feel her baby. And
Yeah.
that was hard on me.
Hmm.
Demised and she had to have that baby. And I just sit with her and experience all the feels. And that's when I was like, no, this is not for me. I gotta go somewhere else. And I knew that I really love understanding the human body and cardiovascular. The heart is so amazing and so powerful. So I was like, I'm going to go there. That's a
Yeah.
little bit more easier to deal with because you already know that people are coming to you because they have an issue.
You're right.
Go into like OB, you're not thinking that way, right?
Yeah.
So with the cardiovascular, I'm like already prepared myself. I know what I'm dealing with. And
Yeah.
so really enjoyed that job. And, I landed a job in Hawaii. I used to travel for work quite a lot. And I also enjoyed that. But I mean, who says no to Hawaii?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. And we were chatting and we realized we both worked at the same hospital in radiology, not at the same time, but years ago when I was an intern and I did a stint in Hawaii at Queen's Hospital. I'm like, what hospital are you at? And I'm like, that's really cool. And so I know exactly where you were, and yeah, it was really kind of an interesting connection that we had. So you're working there. What had you leave that? Like, so you're doing it, you're loving it, it's going great. And then where it's like, the record, and all of a sudden the needle, you're playing the music, and then I was like, stop. So what happened that had you stop doing this work that you loved?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It stopped me from my tracks. But before I go into that,
Okay.
actually, Dr. Shaunna, you were saying that, we we worked in the same field basically, and then we worked in the same hospital. Funny thing is that's the reason why I decided to reach out to you because
Oh,
I was like, oh my God, she's a doctor, she's this. And we just had that interconnection. And I just felt I resonated with you so much. And I felt like you knew exactly how to help me where I am in my business. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there because it is exactly, we resonated together and I just felt connected to with you. And now knowing that we actually worked in the same hospital. So that's really
yeah. Well, and a lot of people don't know what a sonographer is, and but ultrasound technologists, they understand what that would be, but they don't necessarily want to know what a sonographer is. I know that world, and I know what that's like, and I know the challenges of that world.
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, like I could picture you as if you were in, our department, way back when. So I knew the challenges, I knew the heart, I knew the dedication, I knew the skill set. And then how can we repurpose that skill set in, that love of helping others, but how can we repurpose that skill set that you have into a way that serves you better and serves people at a different level, and giving you more freedom to work with who you want, when you want, how you want, where you want. We're going to get to that, and how wonderful health coaching is for that is my favorite thing. So, yes. Okay. So there you are. And then what happened?
So, again, one of the things that, pregnancy is what stopped me in my tracks. And most of us moms, when we get pregnant, it's exciting and we expect all these things that you get to do. I lived in Hawaii, I was very active, figured by the time I'm like 8, 9 months, I'm still paddle boarding in
Yeah.
the middle of the ocean. Okay. However, that's not the case. I had a very high risk pregnancy that got me to be bedridden, not for a few months, but the whole entire pregnancy.
Wow.
It was so high risk that I was highly sensitive to medication, so I couldn't take any medication whatsoever. I'm throwing up. I can't eat. I can't even drink water. That's how bad I was. I had to use a PICC line,
Hmm.
and which is more high risk for you for blood clot and all these crazy things. And so, because of that, I had to go on leave and stop working. And that transition was hard on me
Hmm.
and emotionally because I
Hmm.
was so used to working and I loved
Yeah.
working. I mean, who doesn't? The paycheck was great, you know? But yeah, I ended up being bedridden and just me in that IV pole for many, many months. Um, and then 6 weeks postpartum, my son was going through some health conditions as well because he was premature.
Hmm.
And I was going to go back to work and I was going to get, uh, they were going to make me a lead tech and everything was going to go back to normal and everything was going to be great. But because my son still needed me, it was one of
Hmm.
those that I had to choose between my career that I loved or my baby, and I chose my baby. And I know that a lot of people don't have that choice, and thankfully I did, but it also came with a lot of more issues after that. And so, my marriage was failing. I don't know if it was from me choosing to stay at home. We both decided that,
Yeah.
but it did put a lot on our marriage, our relationship, and
Sure.
me not working was a huge transition, from
Yeah.
being so active with work and then here I'm just at home and, serving my child,
Yeah.
but wasn't what I felt still needed to do.
Yeah. And, I think a lot of people can relate. It might not be exactly like that, but they can relate to having a plan A and then being forced a plan B, and sometimes forced a pivot point of a decision, which is really a life altering decision,
Mhm.
different consequences, and you move forward, and you'd already spent so much time. Like everybody spends energy creating their baby when they're pregnant, but you really, you worked hard to have that baby, like extra hard, and took extra care. And then so that you've come this far and you're used to like really giving a lot of nurturing before that baby's even born. And so, it makes sense that this is where you would focus. It also is kind of interesting and ironic, and I've had circumstances in my life that was similar. It was almost like a not like a foreshadowing or like a premonition sort of thing with that woman that was the high risk. You're like, oh, hey, I don't want to do that. I also had a similar thing where I was in pediatrics before I went into radiology. Pediatrics, that's going to be fun. It's with kids. Who doesn't like, that's going to be awesome, except for these are sick kids and with some serious things. And anyways, so I had a similar experience of like, I left that to go into radiology. And the thing is, you can't quit on your calling. If you're meant to experience something, in my opinion, this is just, I mean, I can't prove it, but I think if you're meant to experience certain milestone markers in this lifetime, that they're going to happen one way or another,
Mhm.
and we can kind of run but we can't hide, and so it found you anyways. This, we're going to deal with this, whatever we're dealing with here, and what you've been able to do, and then now alchemy. I'll leap forward, let people know there's a happy ending to this story, but alchemize the pain that you were about to go through. We haven't even hit it yet, into some amazing purpose, and then, end up higher than you were before. You really took the bounce off of rock bottom, right? You didn't just stay there. That okay? So now we're staying home with your baby. You're a stay-at-home mom, high achieving, go-getter, person. Now we're a stay-at-home mom. Love motherhood. You wanted to be a mother. There's that. And then what? Then what happened? How did things go from tough to tougher to really tough?
Because of that transition, which was hard on me, emotionally and mentally, and I had no idea. It was tough, and I didn't see it, or I just didn't want to see. Again, going back and being in a medical field, being in that presence of others, being the person who's supposed to be helping other people, you want to look strong and
Mhm.
brave and just, on your feet, not weak. And so I think emotionally going through all this, I didn't want to be that way. And because I ignored the signs, 6 months postpartum, I started experiencing way worse stuff. That I never experienced before in my entire life, because I've always been a very high active, very happy person. Sadness wasn't always staying or sticking to me very long. And so I just knew how to manage things like that.
Mhm.
However, this place of my time was not something I could manage. I didn't know how it felt. This wasn't me. I knew something was wrong, and I just didn't know what to do. And at the same time, my marriage was failing. My husband, I had no idea I was an alcoholic at the time. And again, it was just really pushing so much strain on our marriage. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen with us. And I'm here being a home, no income, no
Yeah.
job anymore. And I have this tiny little baby I had to take care of. And so that was a very scary moment. But, I think most of us do the same thing. We ignore the signs. Once again, I ignored the signs some more. And about a year after my postpartum, I got pregnant. And that really exacerbated my emotional turmoil. And the postpartum just went as far as it can be through depression and PTSD and, just a constant role of emotions that I just didn't know how to handle or even figure out what to do with it. So, that just was really probably the darkest moments of my life. just hitting every point. So I just do remember saying to myself, I've experienced every bad thing, and I think this is probably the worst,
Yeah.
because of what I was going through, trying to be a mom and trying to be a wife, and then not having my own income, not knowing where my marriage was going to be and where I was going to end up.
Yeah. And, so many people would say, you got pregnant with your second baby. It's the happiest time in your life. How wonderful. And people who are struggling with fertility would be saying, oh man, I wish I could have that. And so, and then part of you recognizes that, like you appreciate that you are having a baby and you do, like that was good. And I'm going to say you probably didn't see it coming.
No,
Like, while, like now you're having this second baby, and probably at the beginning, now this baby, you weren't bedridden with the second one.
I actually had to have a cerclage because we were trying
Yep.
to keep the
Keeping it
baby.
in. So, yeah, cervical inconfidence. We just got to keep it in.
They usually don't do that until like 14 weeks and up. We did it 9 weeks.
Wow. 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 Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it was still high risk. The entire, were you bedridden for this one or,
Yes, and I was thankfully though I didn't have to have the PIC line because we were prepared. I did have to have IV every day, so
yeah.
go to the doctors and sit there for an hour and get an IV fluids in me. But again, that came with other complications because the cerclage got infected, and I mean, I'm telling you, it was just both pregnancy wasn't the best, and I wish that it was a better pregnancy, but it is what it was, and
Yeah.
I to experience the things that I experienced. And now I understand and can understand with moms that's going through the same, even like birth trauma, both
Yeah.
was very traumatic. My first one, it was between my life and his life. And
Hmm.
that's how bad that first one was.
Yeah.
And my doctor actually didn't want to have a C-section. He wanted vaginal because he was so afraid to put me under and cut me, and he wasn't sure what was going to happen. So, I mean, the story is a lot. And so anyways, I don't even remember where I was going with that, you know.
Well, and the thing is, um, you've had the extreme. What makes you an excellent coach now is, and especially in, I'm going to call it perinatal trauma, but not really. Like, you're helping women further on, they're back to supposed to be living their normal life, but they're not, and they're going through things. And whether their baby was born a month ago, 6 months ago, or 10 years ago, some of these things just don't get fixed on a dime. And you've been there and done that. And we'll talk and explore a little bit more about what it exactly is that you do. But whenever somebody's gone through the extreme situation of something, then better. You've learned more. You have a higher level of experience of all the intricacies of how to do that. And that's what really hones out and carves out and chisels out an expert, which you are an expert and a master in this. And you didn't know that being a cardiovascular sonographer was giving you an inside scoop into the workings of the human body that was going to serve you well later. And you didn't know that, even doing obstetric ultrasound is going to give you some inside information about that's going to become in handy later. And even helping that woman who had a high risk pregnancy, or had a not really had but a not happy outcome to her pregnancy, how you too were going to be facing sort of similar questions and situations in there, and having that. And I think for myself, having been a doctor, been at the top of my game there, and then to become a health coach, and how painful, and they say the beginning, they see the other one, but the messy part and the hard part in the middle, people know the glory, they don't know the story. But in that story is what creates experts. And because I had to I believe I was the first six-figure health coach on the planet, because what doctor in their right mind leaves their health coaching or leaves their medical practice to become a health coach?
Mhm.
And so it was really hard and it took a long time. It was very expensive, but because of that, I've got it. I know this like the back of my hand. I can guide others through there so easily. Likewise, you've been there and it was so painful for you as you go through these scenarios, and it was so extreme. My son's life or mine, to the extremes of it, and the postpartum depression, and it's supposed to be a happy time, but it is not a happy time, and all of that. And we'll talk about some of those extreme symptoms. It wasn't just baby blues. No, we're talking next level. Like, when you're high achieving, Melissa, you you're
Right,
high
right.
achieving. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, sometimes I'm not sure about that, but but because of that, your capacity to help people is immense, just like mine is. And so then when you're working in that, and that is how you can alchemize that pain into purpose. And that is one of the wonderful things about being a health coach, is because it is an opportunity. Once you've overcome something, and you catch your breath a minute and go, whoo, not something you're still struggling with, but something that you have been there, done that, got on the other side of it. That's how we can alchemize that pain into purpose and do work. And then all the time you're doing your work, that soul satisfying work, you're healing yourself. If you're listening to this and maybe you've gone through something, you're wanting to be a health coach and you're exploring that, or you are a health coach but you're not sure of your niche, I want you to dig deep into, like Melissa has done, not just, and we've got lots more to share here, but not just like picking a niche out of a catalog. Let me see, weight loss. Like, you're gonna get you're going to get tired of that, and you're going to not have that passion for it. But when you've been through something like you're going to hear about Melissa, then you can't help but want to make it easier for someone else, because you're like, gosh, you wouldn't wish this on your worst enemy. And so when you do that, so if you're wondering, I wonder what my niche is, I'm going to put a copy of this book, Free to Heal: The 9 Steps to a Soul Satisfying Health Coaching Practice. I'm going to put it in the thing below, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to give you a free copy to that, and just take a look and see, what is that? And it's so helpful. But all right, back to you, Melissa. You are there. Tell us about some of those symptoms that you had, that where it was going towards, because it wasn't just, some I mean, it's not just postpartum depression, but,
No.
you had it next level. Like, I was shocked about what you went through.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't either. And again, like you said, I wasn't expecting any of this because I've never
Mhm.
experienced anything like this or even read anything about this. When you hear postpartum depression, it's not what we think it is.
Yeah.
And why I dove deeper in understanding postpartum recovery. But, at the time, now I have my two babies, and you know I've separated my husband, and I had no income and no support system. My body began to shut down on me.
Mhm.
That was the scariest moment for me because I thought I had cancer in my brain. I thought I had a tumor that was causing all these ailments. My vision was going away. I had these floaters, two different types, black floaters and the white floaters, and I was told that it would be there forever. Like they can't do anything about it. I'm 38, 39 years old, and I was like, I can't
Yeah.
see with these things in my eyes. And then my hearing started fading away. So I had to get talk to a hearing doctor, and then I started blacking out. Now, the blackouts was very scary. I mean, I'm not talking about like, oh, I black out and then no, I couldn't recall what had happened 10 minutes prior. Even to this day, I cannot tell you. It's not there. Like it never even happened. I would have conversations, full conversations with people, and would not know what I just talked about. And that
Mhm.
was weird and scary at the same time. But I think one of the turning points is when I was
Especially as a mom,
oh,
because you're like, you want to remember what you're doing. And
right.
yes, yeah,
And I mean,
yeah.
I'm staying home. I'm taking care of my two babies, and the turning point was when I was driving home from the beach. This is the same drive, 7 minutes from the beach to my house, same place, same route. Every day I took this route, and then I was driving and I was in another spot and I had no idea how I got there. I was at a stoplight or a stop sign and I looked around, couldn't figure out where I was. Somehow I managed to drive into a community, didn't remember how. And I was at a stoplight, looked at my kids and I'm like, okay, I'm putting my kids in danger.
Hmm.
This
Hmm.
not just,
Yeah.
something's
Yeah.
wrong with me and I've gone crazy,
Yeah.
but there was something physically wrong with me, and that's why I thought I had cancer.
Hmm.
There
Yeah.
was nothing else could, I mean, if
Yeah.
I'm physically healthy, all I can think of is there's got to be a
Yeah.
tumor in the brain. And I went to the doctors. We did all kinds of tests. They did vision tests. I mean, they did everything you can think of. And that's when they told me like my vision was just going to be like that and I had to live with that. And but then everything else came back normal. I was healthy. My labs were perfect. They had no idea what was going on, and I had these symptoms without any understanding of why I had this. And to a point where like I think this is where sometimes we feel like some moms who do ask for that help and then you get nothing. Oh, you're
Hmm.
good. You're
Hmm.
healthy. You feel crazy,
Yeah.
and that's where you feel like, am I going crazy? And thankfully, I like, did a psychological evaluation. We did a long test. It was beautiful. Psychiatrist who understood my situation, and we did the test, and everything came back normal.
Yeah.
Surprise. However, she explained to me about fight or flight and
Hmm.
how chronic stress can truly, truly affect us so extreme to
Yeah.
where it starts affecting you physically. My body was screaming for help. It was crying for help. I kept ignoring the signs, ignoring it, and it was just, hey, pay attention. Now I'm going to stop your vision. I'm going to stop you from doing what you're doing because
Yeah.
you need to pay attention. And my frontal lobe wasn't working. So it was a very, very scary moment. But at the same time, I was relieved to understand finally, I have some sort of answer, and now I can move forward on how to support myself. And a friend of mine told me about rapid transformational therapy. And I was like, I don't do therapy. That's not me. You know, I thought therapy was foo foo and being in the medical field, right? Like, that's not what we do. Go to the doctor, they'll help you. So I was like, okay. And she's like, no, this is a different type of therapy. It's not your normal therapy. Go try it out. And I did, finally. We were talking about this where we get so pushed so far
Hmm.
and we don't do anything about what's in front of us until we actually have to.
Hmm.
Well, that's where I was. I finally had to do something. I mean, risking my kids'
Yeah.
lives, my own life, not seeing what's happening and, not knowing what's going on. I finally did it, and it was the best thing I ever did for myself. And because of that, it helped me tremendously. It helped my emotional state. Somehow, my postpartum lifted. Like one day I woke up and I was like, wow, I don't feel that way anymore. And that made me go back to school, learn behavioral health, emotional, wellness, and I became a rapid transformational practitioner. And then that really brought me to understanding more of how our mind can really affect our physical being. So,
Such a powerful story. And I remember you sharing about uh helping. You kind of summed it up like some of that story in a one line sentence, which postpartum PTSD. And I'm like, what did you have PTSD from? And that's when this all came out. And it's like now when you understand what she went through, okay, we get why she might have PTSD. But before you're like, you had a baby. Okay. So yeah. And then what war were you in that you have PTSD? And, but you can see how that is. And man, I mean, there are so many women, maybe they don't have it to the extreme. I'm like, when we're in our niche, we usually do things to the extreme. I always say none of us want to be an expert in what we're an expert in, but here you are. And so then you can make it easier for people who are in a similar or even not as extreme situation. And you learn so much, and you learn about how to transform. So that really makes sense. And you even talked about prepartum PTSD, and I'm like, prepartum, that makes sense. So you understand this in such a deeper level than most people do, because most people won't even think about the trauma that people are going through when they have these high risk pregnancies, for example, or these challenging situations. And that's going to leave a mark. Like
Mhm.
that is going to be something that's and then it's kind of cumulative, all of these things. So, who is it now that you are passionate about helping, Melissa?
You know, again, someone like me who was high achiever, worked all the time, such a workaholic, loved what I did, to having to transition. And motherhood is a transition, whether you like it or not. You're single
Yeah,
and a mom.
yeah,
And, having to choose different challenges and what works best for you and for your family. Somebody who's, needing to release that postpartum weight, whether it's 3 months later or even 10 years later, you're still having that weight that's lingering. It's just a stubborn weight. I know mine stayed about 7 years into mine and I couldn't figure it out, like what was happening. Exhaustion that never goes away, constant exhaustion, chronic exhaustion, brain fog. I mean, I know that I had that and I couldn't figure it out. Um, so they can really reclaim their energy, focus, and show up fully, not just at work, but at home as well. And that's where my passion lies. I first started this because I knew every challenges that we face just as humans, we experience different phases in our lives, and there are transitions. Sometimes they're easy transitions and sometimes they're not, and
yeah.
that's where I believe we need the most support,
Hmm.
when we
Hmm.
have those transitions in our life and just can't figure out what to do.
Yeah.
Like, with my business, I was in a transition with my business and needed to move forward, and I didn't know how. And thank God that you were presented to me, and now we are here.
Yeah, and you have, and I should say, you have a thriving practice. You are making a huge difference in people's lives. Your story has a happy ending with your family as well. Like, you've got energy. She looks happy and healthy here as well, and you really are. I had the pleasure of seeing you, was it a month or so or ago? And just the picture of health and happiness. I believe you homeschool your kids, and so the story does have a happy ending personally. But now it's time to kind of give back and help somebody else who's maybe struggling and being in that dark place that you had been, and you can shine a little light, be the beacon for them as well. So I love that. And you're now in Florida, correct?
Yes, my family's here, so we moved here. And again, just being a stay-at-home mom, became a homeschool mom, and needed to work at home. Well, didn't need to, but it was something that I knew I wanted because I wanted to continue being a mother. I wanted to
Hmm.
continue being a homeschool mom for my children. I didn't want to just hand them off because they've been so used to me, and maybe I have an attachment issue. I don't know. But it really, this business, this practice is so lucrative in so many ways. The freedom to choose my time, my days, when I want to work, and not just that, but also giving time to my business and putting investment on that and investing in myself, and then in turn giving that time back to my children. And that's the biggest part of this, is really doing it for my kids. And
Yeah.
yeah, I've really loved doing what I'm doing, and I'm just so happy that I also not just invested in myself, but also in my business, and that has really helped me flourish where I am today.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Which is really kind of was I was going to ask, what are some of the favorite parts of it? And that's what I love about health coaching. It does give you freedom, and it really gives you purpose as well. What are some things that you maybe learned from working with your clients? So you'll have your story. You learn a lot from going through there, but I find that as we help others, yes, we're teaching them, we're helping them, but also we're learning in return. What is something that you've learned from working with your clients?
I think one of the biggest ones is like how much women, especially mothers, carry silently
Yeah.
where it was. You know, we're expected to just like hold on to these weights, the pressure to be there for everybody. And then the
Hmm.
guilt to always, feeling like you're falling short all the time. I don't know how
Right.
many moms I've spoken to and worked with where they're just like feel so guilty doing even simple little things like taking a bath. They
Yeah.
feel like they're not serving others properly if they do something little for
Hmm.
themselves.
Hmm.
Many of us also have been told like feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, or even disconnected is just part of being a mom, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's healing really comes from finally feeling like seen, heard, and validated. And that's what I give a lot of these women that I work with. I wanted that for myself, and I was able to give that to myself, but it took me a long time to realize that. And that's where I don't want any moms to go through, to have to go through that long process of figuring it out by yourself, because you don't have to. You're not alone in it. There is support. And, just being able to just learn how to process your own emotions and really just be there for yourself and have that guide to walk you through it.
I love it. And I remember you saying, because a lot of times one of the things that, if nothing else, kind of a side effect of having a baby is weight gain often. Usually there's some extra postpartum weight. And you really look at when you're helping these women, because sometimes that's what they're coming to you for. Like they're exhausted. Sometimes it's deeper and there's more of those issues similar to you. But sometimes it really is just like, I want to get rid of this baby weight. It's been 10 years now. I want to get rid of this baby weight. And there's things that sometimes are literally weighing people down, but then also figuratively. And so, and these are women who are overwhelmed. And you said something about like, it's not about adding more things to her plate, but removing like what's weighing her down and like whether it's like, I think it was something like about toxic habits and like unprocessed emotions, which is basically what you had just said. But I loved how you said it. Like the things that are unprocessed, that's what's, you know, we have layers. There's a saying, the issues are in the tissues. And so it's
Mhm.
not about like giving her more, okay, do this exercise plan, do this meal plan, do that. It's not about that. It's like getting rid of peeling some of these layers that we've accumulated as a cushion. And I just thought, that's somebody who's been there, done that, and who knows. Like it's not about dieting, it's not about adding more things. And because these women are already at the brink and you don't want to break them. Um, One
Yeah.
of the questions I love to ask is about the myth, and you're helping these women who are high achieving women typically. And they're like, why can't I just do this? Like, I'm so good in my career here, but here I am, and I've got this exhaustion, this overwhelm, this excess weight. What do you think is the biggest myth when it comes to women that are looking to get their energy back and so on, especially and lose that excess weight, especially postpartum? What are some of the myths that are out there about that?
I think the biggest myth with all this, especially like the brain fog, right? Also, you have a mom fog. It's normal.
Hmm.
I think that's the myth right there. It's just normal.
Yeah.
And it's something that we need to push through. So
Yeah.
we've been conditioned to believe that this is a constant state of depletion just because we're a mom. And
Hmm.
that's not how it's supposed to be, and that's not true. The truth is that these symptoms are just random or inevitable, and they're just signals from our body telling us that we need to do something about it
Yeah.
instead of ignoring it. And the more we ignore it, the more risk we're putting ourselves in and the more health conditions that may occur.
Yeah, I think, my mom used to tell me, just because everyone else is doing it doesn't make it right. And so, yeah, I think that is a myth that it's, oh, you had a baby, it's just normal, and it's not. And I love how you say it's not, it's a signal and it's a wake up. And like you said yourself, I ignored the signs. They got louder and they got louder and louder, and until you're like literally forced there at that stop sign, going, how did I get here? I've got I got my two kids in the back seat, and I don't know how I got here.
Hmm.
That's not good. And so that is that moment where you're like, okay, we have to, something's got to change. This is this then that's the turning point where the wake up call is like, this is not okay. And so I really like, that's not normal. And so yes, maybe the tests all said that it was normal. Maybe they said there's nothing wrong with you, but that's not okay. And so just because other people might be stressed out or other people might be exhausted, uh it doesn't have to be that way. And you're really a champion for these women to be able to empower them so that they can enjoy motherhood, that they can, this is something that can be the best blessing at all. And if you know someone who's struggling with some of these things and you've heard Melissa's story and you're resonating, if you have questions, put them in the comments below. Or if you resonate with any of her story, go and share yours in the comments as well, because I think the more that we normalize it, I think that's also helpful, because so many women just feel like they have to put on the perfect facade and everything's fine. And I had a baby and I'm appreciative, which we are, but like we're not going to let anyone know. And then when it happens to us, I think one of the things is people feel really, really alone. And you're not alone. So we were swapping postpartum stories, prepartum and antenatal, postpartum stories, uh, before, and it's like, we don't talk about these things, and I'm not saying you lead with that at the coffee shop, but it's helpful for other people to know that this happens, and it's not uncommon, but then so many people are left unsupported. How have you grown, Melissa, as a health coach? I know that this is one of the best personal development journeys you can go on, is by giving, but also in receiving. How have you grown, would you say, in this career as a health coach? What are some things that have improved, or that you've noticed yourself because you took that road less traveled and became a health coach and left that career and allowed things to unfold, be a mom, but also be able to do meaningful work and give back? What are some of the things that you would say?
Well, since this was such a huge experience in my life and a learning curve, obviously, um, this wasn't just a professionally, but it was on a soul level because
Yeah.
of did go through. I was just surviving for a little bit there, and then I realized that it wasn't what I wanted to do. I knew that it wasn't me, and I was burnt out. I was pushing through. I had self-doubt and just thinking that that was what strength looked like. You
Hmm.
know, pushing through all this, that means that I'm strong. But honestly, it's not. And I learned that true strength really is about being soft, listening inward, giving yourself grace and choosing growth. You know,
Hmm.
I felt more grounded when I chose me. I chose to
Hmm.
take control of my health and my life and not allowing all these other noises, things that was going on mentally, emotionally, and what was going in around my home. Um, my kids were always my saving grace. I always say that because it took one look at them and I knew that I had to be better. And that was just the push. And from there, I started honoring my body, my emotions, and just knowing my capacity. And because of this, my marriage improved and I started being more motivated. It actually got me to start writing a book. Life happens all the time. And, going through this, trying to heal myself, and I lost my little brother a couple of years ago. And this is something you and I also had something in common because you lost your son around the same time. And, grief is hard. And again, I think being in a military family, I was taught to be strong and brave and not cry. And so just going through all of this, thankfully, I was already at a place, a good place in my life when I lost my little brother. And
Yeah.
it wasn't as heavy for me. Um, but yeah, I mean, just knowing and understanding what to do next and choosing myself. I think that's it all comes down to just choosing myself and taking control and not allowing all the other stuff to just take me down because I wasn't going to let all of that, the PTSD, the postpartum, all of the trauma that I experienced to define who I was because I knew deep down who I was and I was meant to do more.
Yeah. There's a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think when you go through what you've gone through, you become stronger and more resilient. And I've seen you grow as as a human and allowing you to be able to handle and navigate the inevitable things that come your way. Any regrets on choosing the road less traveled and going from cardiac sonographer to health coach and stay-at-home homeschooling mom? Any regrets about the path you took or anything you go back to tell that former self of yours?
No, I honestly, I don't regret a bit of it at all. I'm very grateful that I got to experience every single thing. Not only is it to help others, but it also made me stronger. I felt like it made me stronger as a person. I have better grasp of how to handle these situations. Um, so there's not one regret. And if I could tell my prior self, even in my first pregnancy, I would tell her that she's not broken, you know? We're just overwhelmed. And it's okay to be overwhelmed because it's not just mentally. And this is funny because this is not funny, but it is something that it just kind of reminded me of a gentleman who reached out to me, a husband who had his wife just had she's 2 months postpartum and on her second baby, but her first baby, she had all these, emotional turmoils and didn't know what to do with it. And he was terrified that it was going to happen again. And so he
Yeah.
reached out to me and and he told me all these things about what she was going through. And he's like, what you told me is exactly what my wife's going through. And I said, that's great.
Hmm.
Let me talk to her. And she was not willing to talk to me because
Hmm.
nobody really wants to talk about all their
Yeah.
problems, especially to a complete stranger. But, I guided him to talk to her in a way that made her feel safe, feel seen, and that this isn't something that she needed to do. It was something that was an option for her.
Yeah.
And then I also left him a voicemail saying, hey, I've been there. I was there. I've
Yeah.
experienced that. I had the same thought, the same worry, the same feelings. It is a normal reaction when your body is in imbalance.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned throughout this whole entire experience is that it's not just our mental state that we need to really focus on. It's also our physical body. And this is where that medical background, that medical science comes in handy for me because I know how our body is interconnected and how it works and all the detoxification and what it's supposed to do. And if they're not working properly, it will affect you emotionally. And so, again, when you're overwhelmed like this, it's not that you're broken or there's something wrong with you because it's not, and it's okay. You just have to start trusting your body, listen to your intuition and just give yourself some love and care. And,
Yeah.
like we do for everyone else, but
Yeah.
take that, even a little bit of that, and turn it into yourself. And healing is possible.
One last thing that I wanted to kind of ask you, Melissa, is, when you are helping people and you're getting right to the root cause, it is not uncommon that, so much else improves. And I love how you just shared about that person that you're not even working with yet, but you're already guiding them. And how great is it that like you would never have been able to do that as a cardiac sonographer? Like, had it not been for your experience, you wouldn't be able to help people in that way. But when you help with one thing, there's all of these other gifts that you get to unpack when you get to root cause. Do you have an example of a client that you've worked with that might be kind of like shares that you kind of illustrates that point?
I think one of the clients that really I love working with her is that she has such an inspiring transformation. She's a mom, she works, and she had a lot on her plate. She was
Hmm.
navigating a divorce, raising school-aged kids, managing lupus diagnosis, but also wanted to do bodybuilding competition. And she had done it a year prior, and she remembered how challenging that was when she was training because she was constantly in pain. I mean, you're working out and then you're in pain and you have to go take 2 to 3 hour naps, and she's constantly exhausted. And even though she was on medication and receiving IV treatment, she was still feeling just not herself. So when she came to me, she was completely frustrated and she was in pain. She didn't want to be in pain anymore. She was tired of going and taking 2 to 3 hour naps in the middle of the day. She couldn't function properly. And one of the things that really bothered her the most is that she couldn't really enjoy being with her kids. And she lives in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So I know exactly how that felt. I was there when I lived in Hawaii. I was bedridden and I couldn't enjoy that island. And so this is one of the things that she just was so done with and didn't want to deal with. 2 years with lupus, and she just wanted to manage her, symptoms and feel good again. So to have that energy to move through her day with ease and just feel strong, but also be stronger for her competition and not have those pains that she was experiencing the year prior to. So we started simple but sustainable shifts, supporting her guts and her hormones, reducing inflammation, and nourishing her body with foods that worked for her, not against her. And then we worked after a couple weeks, she started reducing her pain, her energy increased, and then, after a few months, she started to feel stronger and happier and more alive. And I think that one of the things that she told me, she's like, I feel prettier. She's like, this is weird, but for some reason, I feel prettier. Her cravings disappeared. Became more present and was able to actually spend the day outside with her kids without going home after 30 minutes. So, but honestly, the real magic, it wasn't about physical health. She rebuilt habits that really stuck and created space for joy and described her transformation in two simple words: pure joy. So her kids also improved their health because they were watching their mom, changing her habits, tweaking her health, and just, um, started doing what she was doing, and now they're feeling more happier, less irritable, more alive as well, and more energized. And now they're working out together, and it's just such a fun way to really watch and experience with her.
Yeah. So she, not only did her own health, but her kids got better. Not only did her physical health improve, which is also awesome. And, but mental health and joy, also. So I love that. Where can people get in touch with you, Melissa? How can they connect with you?
So they can connect with me through innertranquility.life. That's INNERTRANQUILITY .life, or they can find me on Instagram, Nelissa Patterson. My first name is Neliza Patterson with SON.
Yeah, I love it, Melissa. Yeah, it looks like it's said Neliza, but it's said Melissa, but it's spelled like Nel. IZZ, depending on which line of the border you're at, A. So, Nalissa Patterson, it has been an absolute pleasure. If you are someone who is struggling like that, definitely reach out to Nalissa. She is the real deal. But also, if you're a health coach and you're like, how can I get this going? How I really want to do this work. How can I get my practice up and running? I've got a video up here on how to start your health coach practice from scratch. So there's some 5 key steps that will get you on your way. And with that, have a fantastic week. And of course, be good for you.